In this video, we will delve into the most chilling true crime stories from the US, where the victims are the killer's own children or loved ones. What dark forces, mental illness, desperation, or twisted motives drove these parents to commit the ultimate evil, the kinslayers? If life behind bars or the death penalty truly fits the horror, and who mourns the victims who was hurt by their own loved ones? Susan Smith, State, South Carolina, age 54. Susan Smith is one of the most infamous figures in American true crime history. Born Susan Leigh Smith, originally Vaughan, on September 26, 1971, in Union, South Carolina, she grew up in a turbulent household. Her father took his own life when she was just 6 years old, and her mother remarried a man named Bev Russell, who later faced allegations of sensitive mistreatment Susan during her teenage years. These early traumas contributed to a lifelong struggle with depression. Susan attempted to kill herself twice as a teen and was diagnosed with dependent personality disorder. Despite these challenges, she tried to build a normal life. She worked as a grocery store clerk at Winn-Dixie and married David Smith in 1991. The couple had 2 sons, Michael Daniel, born on October 10, 1991, and Alexander Tyler, born on August 15, 1993. But their marriage was rocky, plagued by mutual infidelity, and it ultimately crumbled in the wake of the tragedy that would define her life. Before the crime, Susan had an affair with Tom Findlay, the son of her boss at Winn-Dixie. When Tom ended the relationship, because he didn't want to raise another man's children, it became a key motive in what followed. The crime itself unfolded on October 25, 1994, in the quiet town of Union, South Carolina. Susan strapped her 2 young boys into her 1990 Mazda Protégé and drove to John D. Long Lake. There, she released the parking brake, allowing the car to roll into the water, where the children passed away. Panicking, Susan ran to a nearby house and fabricated a story that a black man had carjacked her vehicle and kidnapped her sons. She described the alleged assailant as a man in his 30s or 40s, wearing a dark jacket and a knit cap. This false narrative ignited a massive nationwide search, drawing intense media attention and exacerbating racial tensions in the community and beyond. For 9 agonizing days, the public held vigils and hoped for the boys' safe return, while investigators grew suspicious of inconsistencies in Susan's account. On November 3, 1994, under pressure from polygraph tests, she failed and relentless questioning, Susan confessed to the murders. Her motive: she wanted a fresh start with Tom Findlay, unburdened by her children. Divers recovered the car with the boys' bodies still buckled in their seats, and letters from Findlay corroborated her desperation. The case's aftermath was profound. It fueled discussions on racial bias in media coverage due to her fabricated story, highlighted gaps in mental health support, and even influenced debates on the death penalty for women. Tragically, the lake became a memorial site, but in 1996, another accident there claimed 7 more lives when a car plunged in while visitors paid respects. The trial began in July 1995 at the Union County Courthouse. Susan was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, seeking the death penalty. Her defense team argued that her actions stemmed from severe depression and a history of abuse, including molestation by her stepfather. Psychiatric experts testified to her dependent personality disorder, chronic depression, and the overwhelming stress of her failing marriage and affair. Susan took the stand, tearfully apologizing to her family and ex-husband, insisting, "I'm not the monster everyone thinks I am." After just 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury opted for life without parole instead of execution, sparing her life, but ensuring she'd spend her days behind bars. She was convicted on both murder counts and sentenced to life in prison. Since 1995, Susan has been incarcerated at Leith Correctional Institution in Greenwood, South Carolina. Her time in prison hasn't been without controversy. In 2000, she was disciplined for having inappropriate relations with two guards, Houston Cagle and Alfred Rowe, leading to their convictions and her contracting herpes. She's also faced penalties for substance use inside the facility. On a more positive note, Susan has participated in religious programs, written letters to fellow inmates and supporters, and expressed remorse through interviews and correspondence. She became eligible for parole after 30 years in 2024, but on November 20, 2024, the South Carolina Parole Board unanimously denied her release. Her ex-husband David Smith and the original prosecutor vehemently opposed it, arguing she showed insufficient genuine remorse. She's next eligible in 2026. As of December 2025, 31 years after the murders, Susan remains imprisoned at age 54. The case was revisited in October 2025 to mark the anniversary, with media outlets reflecting on its lasting impact. It stands as a stark symbol of false accusations, mental health crises in women, and the complexities of forgiveness in the justice system. There have been no new appeals or evidence suggesting innocence, and public opinion largely supports her continued incarceration. Susan's story continues to be dissected in documentaries, books like her ex-husband's, Beyond All Reason, and true crime podcasts, serving as a cautionary tale about the depths of human despair and the irreversible consequences of betrayal. Andrea Yates, State, Texas, age 61. Andrea Pia Yates was born on July 2, 1964, in Hallsville, Texas, near Houston. She grew up in a devout Catholic family with an alcoholic father and a mother battling depression. Her personal life significantly took a turn when she met Rusty Yates in 1989 at a Houston apartment complex. After 4 years of dating, they married on April 17, 1993. Influenced by itinerant preacher Michael Weroniecki, who preached submission, home births, and isolation from modern society, the couple adopted a nomadic lifestyle at first, living in a converted bus. They had 5 children. Their marriage strained under the pressure of constant pregnancies, and Andrea's deteriorating mental health, as Rusty resisted birth control, adhering to Weroniecki's teachings that more children pleased God. Andrea's mental health issues dated back to her teens with depression, but they escalated severely after her first child, manifesting as postpartum depression. Despite doctors' warnings against more pregnancies, Rusty insisted, leading to Mary's birth in 2000, which worsened her condition. On June 20, 2001, at their home in Clear Lake City, Houston, Texas, Andrea waited until Rusty left for work, then methodically ended the lives of her 5 children in the bathtub. First 3-year-old Paul, then 2-year-old Luke, 5-year-old John, 6-month-old Mary, and finally 7-year-old Noah, who discovered the scene and tried to flee. The ordeal lasted about an hour. She immediately called 911, confessing, "I killed my kids," convinced her actions saved them from eternal damnation amid her psychotic delusions. The motive stemmed from severe postpartum psychosis, compounded by chronic depression and inadequate treatment. Doctors had advised no more children, but Rusty ignored it. Weroniecki's doctrines fueled her belief that her children were cursed, and she was a bad mother. Evidence included the children's bodies found in the bedroom, her immediate confession, and psychiatric reports detailing auditory and visual hallucinations, like believing TV messages came from Satan. The case shocked the world, sparking debates on husbands' responsibilities, medical oversight, and systemic failures in supporting postpartum mothers. It prompted Texas laws on postpartum depression screening and reshaped views on the insanity defense. Andrea's first trial began in February 2002 in Harris County, Texas, with prosecutor Joe Omby charging capital murder for 3 deaths of Noah, John, and Mary. Defense attorney George Parnham argued not guilty by reason of insanity due to postpartum psychosis. Prosecution expert Park Yates falsely testified about a non-existent law and order episode mirroring the case. The jury convicted her of murder on March 18, 2002, sentencing her to life without parole. In 2005, a Texas appeals court overturned the conviction due to Yates' erroneous testimony, and the Texas Supreme Court denied the prosecution's appeal. Her second trial started in June 2006, where the jury found her not guilty by reason of insanity on July 26, 2006, committing her indefinitely to a state mental hospital instead of prison. Andrea remained mostly silent during proceedings, but experts confirmed she couldn't comprehend her actions' wrongfulness amid her psychosis. Post-verdict, Andrea was initially held at North Texas State Hospital before transferring to Kerrville State Hospital in 2007, a forensic psychiatric facility in Texas. There she engages in therapy, support groups, and religious activities, works jobs like sewing clothes, reads books, and maintains contact with her attorney Parnham. She has no major disciplinary issues, though her psychosis is managed solely through medication. She divorced Rusty in 2005. Rusty remarried Laura Arnold in 2006, fathering a son Mark in 2008, but they divorced in 2015. He continues supporting Andrea, viewing her as ill rather than criminal. The children are buried at Forest Park East Cemetery. Annual court reviews assess her for release, but they're consistently denied due to high relapse risk. No release plans exist. As of December 2025, Andrea remains at Kerrville State Hospital at age 61. Her March 2025 review upheld commitment, citing stability dependent on medication. The case's legacy endures as a symbol of postpartum psychosis, inspiring the Yates Children's Memorial Fund for mental health advocacy and laws enhancing postpartum care. It teaches profound lessons: the critical need for early intervention in maternal mental health, the dangers of ignoring medical advice under religious pressures, and how systemic support can prevent such tragedies, urging society to prioritize empathy and resources for struggling mothers. Christina Riggs, State, Arkansas, age 28. Christina Marie Riggs was born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. She endured a childhood scarred by sensitive mistreatment. She was the victim of her brother starting at age 7 and by a neighbor at 16. Her family grappled with alcoholism and violence, while Christina's struggles with obesity from a young age invited relentless bullying, fueling a deep-seated depression. She married John Riggs in 1988, but the union dissolved after a few years amid domestic abuse. She had 2 children, Justin Dalton Thomas from another relationship and Shelby Alexis Riggs with John. As a single mother, Christina worked grueling night shifts as a licensed practical nurse, battling severe depression that led to 3 suicide attempts before the crime, including in 1992 and 1996. Addicted to alcohol, cigarettes, and occasional drugs, she felt utterly overwhelmed by the pressures of raising her kids alone, her exhaustion a constant companion. On November 4, 1997, in her modest home in Sherwood, Arkansas, near Little Rock, Christina's pain culminated in horror. She gave her 5-year-old son Justin a dose of amitriptyline, an antidepressant known as Elevil, to sedate him before smothering him with a pillow. For her 2-year-old daughter Shelby, she injected morphine pilfered from her hospital job. But when the dose proved insufficient, she suffocated her too. In a desperate bid to join them, Christina swallowed 28 medicine pills and injected herself with a substance that can stop the heart. Her mother discovered her in time, rushing her to the hospital where she survived. From her hospital bed, Christina confessed in a recorded statement, detailing the acts with chilling precision. She left suicide notes for her mother and friends, expressing profound remorse and pleading, "I hope someday you all can forgive me." Her motive was rooted in crushing depression. She believed she couldn't provide for her children, and that death would spare them a life of suffering. "I don't want my children to grow up without a mother," she said, haunted by her own abusive past. Evidence was irrefutable: hospital stolen drugs, the notes, and autopsies confirming smothering and poisoning. The case rocked Arkansas, igniting fierce debates on capital punishment for women and the role of depression in filicide, one of the rare instances where a mother faced execution for such crimes. The trial commenced in January 1998 at Pulaski County Circuit Court in Arkansas. Prosecutor Larry Jegley charged capital murder, pursuing the death penalty. Defense attorneys John Wesley Hall and Craig Lambert mounted a vigorous insanity plea, highlighting Christina's major depressive disorder and post-traumatic stress from childhood abuse. Psychiatric experts backed their case, testifying to her fractured psyche, while Christina herself took the stand, declaring, "I loved my children more than anything." Yet she offered no denial, pleading guilty and begging for death to reunite her with her babies. After just 15 minutes of deliberation, the jury convicted her of capital murder on March 30, 1998, sentencing her to death by lethal injection on April 30. Waiving all appeals, Christina insisted she wanted to die, her resolve unyielding in the face of clemency pleas from advocates who saw her as a victim of systemic failures in mental health care. From 1998 to 2000, Christina was held at McPherson Unit of the Arkansas Department of Correction, where she joined support groups, penned letters to family expressing ongoing sorrow, and grappled with remorse. Antidepressants caused her to gain weight, reaching 270 pounds, a stark contrast to the nurse she'd once been. On May 2, 2000, at Cummins Unit in Varna, Arkansas, she became the first woman executed in the state since 1845, and only the fifth in the U.S. since the 1976 reinstatement of capital punishment. By lethal injection, the process hit snags due to her collapsed veins from her size. She even requested potassium chloride, echoing her failed suicide attempt. Her final words, delivered calmly at 9:28 p.m. as she passed, were second. "There is no way words can express how sorry I am for taking the lives of my babies. Now I can be with my babies as I always intended. I love you, my babies." Over 2 decades later, as of December 2025, Christina's story endures without alteration. She's long gone, executed at 28. Yet it resurfaced in an AY magazine piece on November 5, 2025, titled Murder Mystery: The Mother on Death Row, which delves into the tragedy and ongoing controversies surrounding her execution. Her legacy looms large as a symbol of mental health crises, intersecting with capital punishment, sparking calls for clemency reforms and better support for single mothers. No posthumous appeals or innocence claims have emerged, but her case continues to fuel national conversations on compassion versus retribution in the justice system, a poignant lesson in the fragility of the human spirit. Melissa Lucios, Texas, age 56. Melissa Elizabeth Lucio was on June 18, 1969, in Lubbock, Texas. She endured a childhood marred by abuse and hardship in a low-income family. Marrying Guadalupe Lucio at just 16, she had 5 children before the union dissolved amid his addiction and violence. She later partnered with Robert Antonio Alvarez, bearing 7 more kids, bringing her total to 12 by the time of the tragedy. Arrested while pregnant with twins, her 13th and 14th children, she gave birth in custody and placed them for adoption. Her mental health was ravaged by depression and post-traumatic stress disorder stemming from childhood sexual abuse, compounded by a history of cocaine addiction that influenced her vulnerability during interrogations. The heart of the case unfolded on February 17, 2007, in her Harlingen, Texas home, when her 2-year-old daughter, Mariah Alvarez, her 12th child, was found unresponsive and not breathing. Rushed to the hospital, Mariah died from her injuries. Lucio maintained that Mariah had fallen down the stairs 2 days earlier, causing head trauma. However, The autopsy revealed extensive signs of abuse, bruises in various stages of healing, bite marks, hair loss, a broken arm from 2 to 7 weeks prior, and damage to her kidneys, lungs, spine, and head. Lucio was arrested shortly after. During a grueling 7-hour interrogation by Texas Ranger Victor Escalon, without a lawyer, food, or water, she denied abuse over 100 times before breaking, saying, "I guess I did it. I'm responsible." She admitted to past spankings, biting, and pinching Mariah's genitals, but denied causing her death. Siblings testified to witnessing her hitting the child. Prosecutors alleged chronic abuse culminating in fatal blunt force trauma, while Lucio and her defenders insisted it was an accident, with her confession coerced amid psychological distress. Evidence centered on Dr. Norma J. Farley's autopsy concluding death by severe head injury inconsistent with a fall, and an ER doctor's claim it was the worst abuse case he'd seen. Yet later experts, like Dr. Thomas Young, critiqued this, arguing the injuries aligned with a fall. The case stirred controversy over injustices against poor, Hispanic women and coercive tactics, especially since CPS had investigated Lucio for neglect but found no prior abuse. In 2008, at Cameron County, Texas, court, prosecutor Armando Villalobos, amid a re-election bid, charged capital murder. Defense attorneys argued the injuries stemmed from the fall, and that Lucio's confession was tainted by her mental state. Psychiatric experts testified to her PTSD influencing her statements, but the court barred some evidence. Lucio steadfastly proclaimed innocence, insisting on the accident. The jury convicted her of capital murder, sentencing her to death by lethal injection. Appeals followed. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals rejected her in 2011. A federal court briefly vacated the conviction in 2019 over trial court interference with her defense, but it was reversed. In April 2022, the CCA stayed her scheduled April 27 execution to review new evidence. By April 2024, Judge Arturo Nelson recommended a retrial due to suppressed exculpatory evidence. In November 2024, he declared Lucio actually innocent and urged the CCA to overturn her conviction and death sentence. Since her conviction, Lucio has been held at the Patrick O'Daniel Unit, known as Mountain View Unit, in Gatesville, Texas, the state's facility for female death row inmates. She participates in religious programs, maintains contact with family and supporters, and actively asserts her innocence through clemency campaigns. As of December 2025, at age 56, Lucio remains on death row, awaiting the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals' final decision on Judge Nelson's November 2024 recommendation to vacate her conviction. The court has yet to rule, prolonging her limbo despite mounting evidence of innocence. Her case has become a potent symbol of wrongful convictions, coerced confessions, and systemic biases against poor, minority women. It has spurred memorial funds and Texas justice reforms focusing on postpartum issues and abuse detection, underscoring the urgent need for equitable legal processes to prevent such enduring tragedies. Maria Isabel Martinez, State, Georgia, age 41. Maria Isabel Garduno Martinez was born around 1984 in Mexico, possibly in Oaxaca, and she immigrated illegally to the United States about 2005. Married to Martin Romero, who was 33 at the time of the tragedy in 2017, the couple built a family of 5 children in Georgia. Their home life was far from idyllic. In 2015, the Georgia Division of Family and Children Services investigated reports of domestic abuse, including Romero allegedly beating the kids with belts and phone chargers. But the case closed without finding imminent danger. Martinez's mental health deteriorated sharply after her father's death in Mexico, just after Father's Day in 2017, plunging her into severe depression. During a recent family trip to Savannah, she described feeling a devil-like spirit overtaking her, compelling her to protect her loved ones from crashing waves, a harbinger of the delusions to come. The horror unfolded on July 6, 2017, in their modest home on Emery Lane in Loganville, Gwinnett County, Georgia, a quiet suburb turned scene of devastation. In the dead of night, Martinez took a knife, and the victims were her husband and 4 sleeping children. She dialed 911 at 4:47 a.m., confessing in Spanish that she had done the stabbing. Police arrived to a gruesome sight. Martin Romero and 4 kids, 10-year-old Isabella, 7-year-old Dakota, 4-year-old Dylan, and 2-year-old Axel, lay dead from their wounds, while 9-year-old Diana survived, but requiring emergency surgery. Martinez had attempted to kill herself but lived, having arranged the bodies in one room so they could be together. From her hospital bed, she initially confessed but later retracted, bizarrely blaming family friends. Martinez reiterated sensing a devil-like spirit from the Savannah trip, believing she was saving her family from evil forces. The motive appeared rooted in profound depression and psychosis, possibly involving hallucinations or a distorted sense of protection, with no clear alternative explanation like financial strain or infidelity. Evidence was overwhelming: the knife as the weapon, bodies at the scene, Diana's testimony, and the 911 call, corroborated by autopsies confirming fatal stab wounds. The case shocked Georgia, igniting debates on mental health access for immigrants, the perils of undocumented status, and whether capital punishment suits the mentally ill. Martinez was arrested immediately, and Diana was placed with relatives, her survival a lone beacon amid the loss. Proceedings began swiftly in Gwinnett County Magistrate Court, where prosecutor Danny Porter, sometimes associated with Larry Jegley in similar cases, charged her with 5 counts of malice murder, 5 of murder, and 6 of aggravated assault. Defense attorney Robert Greenwald pushed for psychiatric evaluations, highlighting her fragile state. Prosecutors opted against the death penalty due to her mental condition, acknowledging the role of illness in the crimes. Experts testified to her deep depression and disorder, though Martinez pleaded guilty but mentally ill, admitting the acts while underscoring her impaired mind. The jury convicted her in April 2019 on 5 murder counts, 1 aggravated assault, and 1 third-degree child cruelty, sentencing her to life without parole plus 21 concurrent years. Her courtroom demeanor was surreal, smiling, thumbs-up gestures, praying, and head-shaking during early hearings, behaviors that underscored her detachment and fueled media frenzy. Since her conviction, Martinez has been incarcerated, initially at Gwinnett County Jail before transfer to a Georgia State Prison, likely McPherson Unit or Lee State Prison, facilities equipped for female lifers. As of December 2025, Martinez remains imprisoned at around 41 years old, her case static without new appeals or sentence alterations since 2020. Taylor Rene Parker, State, Texas, age 33. Taylor Rene Parker was born on December 8, 1992. By her late 20s, Parker was entangled in a partnership she fought to preserve through elaborate lies, including faking a pregnancy complete with staged gender reveal parties and fabricated ultrasound images. No formal mental health diagnosis surfaced before the crime, but during her 2025 appeal, her defense argued that prosecutors had engaged in fat-shaming by mocking her appearance in court, possibly tying into her documented weight of 223 pounds at arrest, a tactic they claimed prejudiced the jury against her humanity. The crime itself erupted on October 9, 2020, in the quiet town of New Boston, Texas, in Bowie County, where Parker targeted 21-year-old Reagan Simmons Hancock, who was 35 weeks pregnant. Parker attacked Reagan in her home, stabbing her over 100 times and assaulting her in 4 or 5 different locations, all while Reagan's 3-year-old daughter witnessed the horror. In a frantic effort to seize the unborn child, Braxlyn Sage Hancock, Parker attempted to take the baby from her mother, leaving blood splattered across the floor. Reagan was chosen specifically because she had posted on social media, like Facebook, seeking a photographer for maternity pictures, allowing Parker to pose as one and build trust. They had met several times beforehand, including for a photo session, which gave Parker intimate knowledge of Reagan's routine and schedule, perfectly aligning with her own fabricated pregnancy timeline. Fleeing the scene with the infant, Parker was pulled over by police for erratic driving and speeding. She claimed she had just given birth roadside, but Braxland died shortly after at an Oklahoma hospital. Parker's planning was meticulous. She had watched videos on checking premature babies and researched faking pregnancies to sustain her ruse. Initially confessing upon arrest, she later partially recanted, admitting the fake pregnancy was to retain her boyfriend, but denying full intent. The motive boiled down to preserving that relationship through any means, escalating from lies to lethal violence. Evidence was damning. Crime scene photos of the bloodied victim, phone searches for preterm infant care and pregnancy simulations, phony ultrasounds, and officers' accounts of the traffic stop. Autopsies revealed Reagan was alive and fighting back during the assault, heightening the brutality. The case sent shockwaves nationwide, branded as one of the most barbaric in years, fueling debates on capital punishment and protections against violence toward expectant mothers. Parker was arrested immediately, with no accomplices involved. Her trial commenced in September 2022 in Bowie County, Texas, where prosecutor Kelly Crisp charged capital murder for killing during a kidnapping attempt. Defense attorney Jeff Harrelson humanized Parker, arguing her family and friends failed to intervene in her escalating deceptions. They contended she was fat-shamed by the prosecution and abandoned by loved ones, but the jury rejected these pleas. On October 3, 2022, the panel of 6 men and 6 women convicted her of capital murder after less than an hour of deliberation. Sentencing followed on November 9, 2022, with death by lethal injection decided in just 1 hour. Parker also faced convictions for capital murder and kidnapping. In court, she downplayed her role, but overwhelming proof prevailed. Reagan's family testified powerfully, with her mother labeling Parker an evil piece of flesh demon, and emphasizing Reagan's agony while still conscious. Appeals ensued, culminating in 2025 when the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals unanimously rejected her claims on November 6, upholding both the death sentence and kidnapping conviction. Since November 9, 2022, she's been housed at Mountain View Unit, also known as Patrick L. O'Daniel Unit, in Gatesville, Texas, the state's facility for female death row inmates. As of December 2025, Parker lingers on death row at 33, with her appeal denied in November 2025 and no execution date set. The case resurfaces in Texas death penalty reports, underscoring its savagery. Media coverage persists in books, documentaries on female inmates, and 2025 articles on fetal abductions. No new innocence evidence has emerged. Her legacy stands as a grim icon of fetal abduction, sparking discussions on pregnant women's safety and the death penalty's role, with no anticipated post-execution appeals. These harrowing cases reveal the profound fragility of the human mind under extreme duress, often rooted in untreated mental illness, abuse, or societal pressures. They underscore the urgent need for better postpartum support, early intervention in trauma, and reforms in justice systems to distinguish between malice and madness. As a society, we must prioritize empathy, resources for vulnerable families, and equitable laws to prevent such tragedies. Ultimately, these stories call us to action, foster compassion, challenge biases, and ensure no mother suffers in silence, safeguarding the innocent from unimaginable loss.